Before we start, I have two things for my housekeeping. Can somebody watch the meeting chat? Because while I'm talking, I can't also read the meeting chat, but I can come back for questions. Secondly, I want to say one thing, and this is not to be mean, but please don't ask me what I think of a manga. We have so little time, we've got so much content to talk about, and I do want to take good questions. And if you have things that are just an opinion, not a real question, that's cool. You get me online, we could talk about it like on Twitter or Bluesky or wherever you want, or but let's keep questions to things that are valuable to the everybody who's here at the panel, so that we all can learn something new. Okay, so that's the only thing I'm going to ask of you. So hello, everybody. Good morning, CitrusCon. I am broadcasting from a small hotel room in the hotel that Nikolai Tesla lived in for many years here in beautiful New York City. At Anime NYC, which if you can get to one year, you should absolutely get to. And today we're talking about the rise of queer manga. And why do I say queer manga? Let's start right there. Well, because back in the day, hello, there we go. Back in the day, in the beginning, we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s here in the West. We had Usenet, we had forums, we had mailing lists, listservs even, not even like Yahoo groups. And we were all talking about some exciting new things, this stuff coming out of Japan. We had manga like Bronze, Etsuai 1989. And we had things like Sailor Moon with Haruka and Michiru showing up and being a beautiful couple. And what we had from manga like this was it established tropes that the audience took for granted, both in Japan and eventually in the West. Why were there tropes like manipulation I'm going to call it boys' love. At the time, it was still called june or yaoi. But we'll call boys' love just for consistency. Why did things like that exist? Well, because the women who were writing this frequently were making commentary about their own relationships or relationships between men and women. And so for many of them, and not all of them, of course, but for many of them, Mizuguchi Akiko sensei has talked about this, about how women were working through some of the inequities in male-female relationships with seme and uke. And so you had things like non-consensual stuff. You also, manga generally has a space of being able to be a place where we talk about things that cannot be expressed at the dinner table. So you had things like incest, because some people thought that was sexy, or you had forms of manipulation like in anime or manga like Gravitation, which is back inexplicably. Gravitation is coming back out again as an omnibus. And it was really influential, and a lot of people in the West who were like married adult women were noticing this and thinking, oh yes, this is a way to sort of, I don't want to say get back at the guys, but in a way it was getting back at the guys. Sailor Moon did something a little different. We had what we phrase in Yuri as a Takarazuka couple. Haruka Michiru. Haruka's very butchy, but now in 2024 we would all look at her and say, oh, gender fluid, because when she is dressed as a man, she is a man, and when she's dressed as a woman, she's a woman. When she's dressed as a senshi, she's a senshi. So, she's gender fluid. And then you have, and possibly maybe even because she uses boku, we might want to say they or he, and we'd have to ask her. We'd have to ask Haruka herself. We don't really know what she would answer. And then we have a butch couple, a butch partner, and then we have Michiru, who's a super ultra femme. And that's a very classic Takarazuka couple, like the Otoku Yaku and the Musume Yaku. And in fact, originally, Takuchi Sensei has said that they were meant to be Takarazuka stars. That was the original initial idea that she had. And at the time, we also had some other things that came through that shared the other main Yuri couple, which is a high-strung, emotionally high-strung, long-haired Nadeshiko Japanese beauty, a classic Japanese beauty, and a cute Genki girl with maybe pigtails who redeems her somehow. And that's like something like Maria Selma got me through. So you have stories like that. So we start in this beginning where these are the things that are being imported over here. And this is where we start developing our Western BL culture and our Western Yuri culture. So this is where we began. But then something interesting happened. The 20th century into the 21st century began, and artists who had grown up during this world with things like BL and proto-queer, let me call it, manga, were starting to become adults, and they were creating their own stuff. And we started getting different things that really changed stuff. So you have Fumi Yoshinaga, who is a BL artist, but she really likes gay men. She likes real gay men, and she has gay friends, and she wanted to do something different. And so she wrote, she's a straight woman, but she wrote a story about two gay men, and it's a very honest story about a couple, let's call it 20 years ago. I think it's later than that, but let's say about 20 years ago. Like in Japan, being an openly gay couple is very hard, and particularly in this series, we have a lawyer. The hairdresser lives a more stereotypical life, and there's actually another BL trope, right? Usually you have characters who are like in creative, i.e. feminine positions. You have things like musicians and, I'm a composer, I travel the world, I'm an artist, I'm a fashion designer, I do hairstyling, I do floral arrangements, stuff like that. You have a lot of early BL characters in these sort of quote-unquote feminine jobs. So we have a hairstylist and a lawyer. And let's face it, being an out lawyer is difficult, really, in many parts of the world. And this story is kind of honest. And then I'm going to jump over to my brother's husband. Tagame Sensei is a fascinating man, and he largely is sort of a pun because he draws very big men. He draws very explicit gay porn, is most of his stuff, but he had a breakthrough hit called My Brother's Husband, and it is a very dear story about a Canadian man who married a man who passed away. He comes to Japan to meet his family because they never got there. And he meets his brother's twin brother, who is a nice man. He is also the kind of passive, very typical homophobic adult male that you would find pretty much in any country. Like, it's fine over there, but I don't want to think about it. And in all those years, he never really dealt with his brother being gay. And he starts to have to deal with the fact that he never dealt with the fact that his brother was gay and has a husband, and he has this family he knows nothing about and never showed any interest in. And it changes. And then one of the hugest breakthrough hits for a lot of reasons, and I wrote a whole essay about this on Okazu, My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, did so much for queer manga. When it came out in Japan, I was asked, as I always am, oh, are we going to get this in English? And I said, who is going to license this story? And then it became a mega hit in Japan. Like, it was like 4 million copies in print, crazy popular. And so then it was licensed here, and it became crazy popular here. Nagata Sensei did a bunch of stuff here. She broke comic essays through into big sales, like huge sales. Comic essays have been around in Japanese manga forever. They're very popular there, and she went through Pixiv, which meant that people were just reading her stuff to read her stuff, and became so popular there that publishers there began to notice her. And so a comic essay broke into a huge sales. That was massive. She also talked about her sexual identity, but as a oh yes, and also I'm a lesbian. Oh, here's the story. And having the word lesbian in the title, and I'm a lesbian, and lesbian stuff is part of the story, but it's not the story. The story is about her mental and physical health. And if you read the rest of the books after that, you find that her mental and physical health is an ongoing thing that she's sharing. Also, she will discuss again her sexual and gender identity, and that these are so popular in Japan and in the West, changed everything. It made the word lesbian in a title. It made conversation about a manga, about, like, with my brother's husband too, gay people, queer people writing queer manga about queer lives that are not just romances, that are not about queer trauma only. And so in the 2010s, something shifted. And that's where we're really starting, is during this shift when queer people are starting to say, we want our stories being told. Now, here's the point of all of this. Let's say you were born in the 1990s. I'm just making something up here. You grew up in a world where queer manga existed. Now you're reading manga, you're in your teens. This is when most people get into manga. And all of a sudden, there's stories about trans people, about asexual people, about gay people, about lesbians. The whole sexual and gender minority spectrum is now available for you to see stories of, and not just fantasies, but also fantasy stories and also real stories. So now you say, I want to draw manga. You can think to yourself, I live in a world where this is possible. And so what has happened is mangaka who grew up in the 20th century and saw these things going out and becoming popular started saying, hey, you know what? I want to write stories for myself, and I want my stories being told, and I want them from a queer perspective. And so here we are in 2024, where we have not just BL and Yuri. And the difference for people, in case that's a question that comes up, generally speaking, my line in the sand, and this is my line in the sand, I cannot ask any of you to agree with this, is queer identity. Because if you say, I am a lesbian, gay, bi, trans, non-binary, questioning, whatever, asexual, agender, whatever, and if you say I have this identity, then that becomes a gender and sexual minority book. As opposed to if you say I just like girls, or I don't really know what I'm doing, or it's not really a conversation. It's not really part of the conversation, because those of us who are queer, identity is a thing we think about. Like, you spend a lot of time thinking about it. And I grew up in a world where I never knew a lesbian ever. And I had friends tell me afterwards, like after I came out years ago, they'd be like, oh yeah, we always knew. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, don't be an asshole. Like, you didn't know. We didn't have that. I mean, it's not that we didn't have the word. Of course we had the word. We didn't really think about it that way in our little white suburban enclave. Like, duh, don't think you knew anything. I didn't know. So, but I grew up, once I realized and I started finding manga, I said, well, okay, yeah, Yuri is fabulous. I mean, Sailor Moon changed my life. Absolutely flat out changed my life. But now I'm seeing more. And so this is where we really begin. The moment where people are growing up and they're going, wow, so I can just write about myself. Everything changed. Everything changed. Usenet gave us a place to talk. And I don't mention this manga, but I do want to give a shout out to Ranma One Half. That, holy shit, did that change a lot of lives. I mean, I was on Usenet when Ranma One Half was like one of the big titles, and you could see people having feelings on screen in real time, like, oh man, I really identify with like girl Ranma. And of course, I'm like older because I came to manga way late comparatively to most people. I was in my mid-30s, and I'm looking at it going, okay, we'll talk again in about 10 years. So, everything changed. So here's where we are. It's 2024, and you have so much to read. Get on this. I very broadly did this, I think, a little chronologically, good, starting with O. Chronologically, it's not hard and fast. I'm just picking some really good titles, and I'm stealing from some of the people who did the panel with me on Friday for some of their things, but I really do want to start with Our Dreams at Dusk. It was a Harvey Award nominee. It is entirely about queer representation and found family. It is a beautifully drawn manga. And if you haven't read it, and I hope you all are screaming in the comments, oh my God, this is the greatest book. It is also about the full range of gender and sexual minorities. And there's a lot of different stories. While it's true, it's about a young boy dealing with his own sexuality and his own identity. There are other stories in it. And one of the, for me, the meaningful moment is when he meets this lesbian who says, this is my wife. My wife and I have literally walked through our adult lives doing that exact same thing. Hi, this is my wife. We've been together. We were 41 years as of this month. We're 41 years together. And we tell people that exactly in that tone. This is my wife. We've been together about 41 years. And it changes young lives. And so for characters in this book to do that and say, oh yeah, it's totally normal. It's really, really an outstanding manga. And I hope you've all read it. But if you haven't, just go grab it at the library. And buying books is important, but reading books is also important. So if you can't afford going out and buying the print, or even Bookwalker is too much, there's always Kindle Unlimited, which, Kindle whatever, but it's a way to read it. But let me please say to you, as a librarian, your local library is your friend. So anything I talk about and you're going, oh, I'd like to read that, ask your local library to get it. Chances are it's in the system somewhere. Okay, this is something that I could, in fact, talk about for many decades. So I'm not going to beat it up too much, except for give me about another 20 minutes and I'll get over it. I'm in love with the villainess. This is a high fantasy isekai, and I have a lot of typos on the slide. I apologize. I don't know what the question mark was about. I think it was a mistype. It is 100% queer representation. This manga does something, and the light novels, the manga, and the anime, which is on Crunchyroll, all do something I've never seen before. In one of the first chapters, really early on, like maybe the second or third chapter, one of the characters turns to the main character and says, so, Ray, are you what they call homosexual? And Ray says, let me answer that. And then she does, and she talks about it. And then later on, we have a more detailed discussion of her first love and how heartbreaking it was and how she was bullied because of it. We talk about some of her friends. There's very excellent trans representation in this story. Really, really heartfelt, good stuff, both positive and negative. And this story is very rooted in things like queer joy, but there's also acknowledgement of queer trauma. In the spin-off, She's So Cheeky for a Commoner, there's also really great disability representation. And you're going to find that I talk about that more than once because I think there's a great overlap. Also, for those of you who are young, I need to tell you this. It's important. Every one of us will become disabled one day. If we are granted enough years on this planet, we're going to become disabled. And I am chronically ill. And as I've gotten older, I'm starting to use wheelchairs more and canes more and other mobility aids. And of course, I wear glasses and I have MS. So who knows what the world is going to bring me? I am really very aware that as we get older, disability becomes less of a maybe and more of a pop, like when, not an if. I feel like having queer and disability representation is a natural fit because for those of us in the anime manga community, a lot of us are chronically ill, we're disabled. And so I'm going to ask you this because I gave out masks at the con. If you go to a convention and you are a healthy, able-bodied person, please wear a mask. Even if you don't have COVID, even if you don't care about COVID, wear a mask to show you care. Okay, it's important to me. What I love about I'm in Love with the Villainess is everything. It has manga and anime adaptations. The manga is especially beautiful. It's out from 7 Seas. The anime is on Crunchyroll for free, so you can go watch it. The light novels are outstanding. And here's something I want you to know about this. It's 5 novels, and it starts off one thing, and it ends somewhere so far away and so profound and so profoundly different and so clever and interesting that I hope you will all read this. But it is openly queer representation. And by an openly queer creator. And that's what you're going to find me talking about when Our Dreams at Dusk is by Kamatani Yuki, who has come out as ex-gender. Inori Sensei is lesbian. really, this is sort of the identity thing is the thing that makes the difference. So let's move on here. We have Boys Run the Riot. And again, I hope you're all going, oh my God, yes, 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 yes. Boys Run the Riot is another nominee for Harvey Awards. It was Best Book for Teens 2021 New York Public Library, Best Top Manga from School Library Journal, Rainbow Book Award 2021. YALSA, which is the American Library Association's Young Adult Library, I've lost them, I say, but they're awards. The creator, Gaku Keito, is himself a trans man. Here's the thing that I think is outstanding. Not only was this book 100% localized, the entire localization team was transgender. Right, that was outstanding, right? But, and here's the important part, Kodansha promoted it that way. And that, to me, is the biggest difference I have ever seen. Nobody has ever done it. Hey, our entire team understood this from inside their hearts. So like, that's so amazing. And also a really good story. There are moments in it where the art is just enough, like Our Dreams at Dusk, where it just grips you. It just grips you right down. Also, I'm in love with the villainous Anoshima Sensei's manga. The art sometimes just makes you go, I mean, really fantastic. And I really hope you all have read that. And if you haven't, again, go to the local library. This manga lives rent-free in my heart. She loves to cook and she loves to eat. When I read this initially, I wrote Yen Press, please license it, please license it. I think I wrote them every day for like a year. Please license this, license this. It's a North American Manga Award nominee. We had our first North American Manga Awards on Thursday night. It was outstanding. It was a Next Manga Awards finisher. It is 100% queer representation. It's written by a lesbian woman about two women who have never addressed their own sexuality, and they come to the conclusion that they are asexual lesbians, and they find romance with each other. It has a live action drama, and that's the picture. The title picture of that is on the right. It was so heartwarming. NHK did such a good job, and they didn't pull any punches with the live action. Like every conversation that they had about asexuality, about being a lesbian, about their histories. Like you have moments where there's not traumatic but difficult conversations. Sometimes, you know, one of the characters will have a memory of family difficulties, or just where they didn't feel included or they were rejected. And there's always there's content warnings in the manga. The mangaka will say this might be difficult for you. And I didn't write this down, but again, there's mental health representation because one of the characters has an eating disorder. Not these two characters, there's a third character who has an eating disorder. There's a fourth character who has been not lesbian for longer than these two. And above all, it's got yummy food. And it's food you can make at home. And I recommend you make food at home. We were watching the live action, my wife and I, and they did the chapter where they make toast with red bean paste and butter, and we immediately ran out and got shook upon and red bean paste and butter. We ate it for like a week because it was so delicious. So I really hope you'll read this. This is one from Yen Press, so I think we've had Kodansha, Yen Press, and Seven Seas so far, but trust me, there will be some others. Until I Meet My Husband. Now, this was not my choice, but when it went into the panel, I 100% agreed. I think this was Nicole Roderick's choice. This is another comic essay, and this is about a queer activist, Rusuke Nanosaki, and how he met his husband and his search for his identity and his understanding of self, acceptance of self. And he and his husband had the first Buddhist same-sex wedding in Japanese history. This is the first time, sorry, my fault. I believe it was Shinto. No, it must have been Buddhist. It was the Buddhist temple, which is unusual in itself because usually it's Shinto. The joke is the Japanese are Shinto on marriages and Buddhist on funerals, and then Christian on Christmas. But a temple did their marriage ceremony. It's still not politically acknowledged. Japan does not have same-sex marriage. There is an organization called Marriage for All Japan, and I recommend following them on the socials They're really fantastic people, and they're doing really great work, and they're literally meeting with each and every individual politician at local and their high government levels to explain why it's important. And what an uphill battle that is. Really, really good. It's both a manga and a book. It's an autobiography, so I highly recommend those as well. So Is Love the Answer was really an interesting story. It's from the creator of Minakun is Asexual by Isaku Uta. It's named a Rainbow Book Award Top 10 title for teen readers of 2024, and also great graphic novels for teens for 2024. And it is fully about a character who is asexual. And there's a lot of asexual lesbians in Japanese manga right now, and light novels and novels. I review a lot of actual novels on my blog as well. But to have a manga where the main character is in fact about asexual identity, I think is really, really unique and has made a big splash here. As you can see, Yalsa particularly is really open to making sure young people see this kind of representation. And so, I hope you'll read this. I believe this one is Kodansha, and I'm really hoping that this is something that you all pick up and support. And this is one of my favorite manga ever. One of my absolute top 5 manga I have ever read now. I love Kazushiro. Kazushiro Sensei has been one of my favorite manga artists for like a million years. I mean, I've been following her for decades. I don't really even know how long. And this is not I think this is the second thing that ever came out in English, but this is the first thing that's gotten a really, really big push. And this is from Kodansha. I literally, I think, begged Ben Applegate to pick this up, please. But this is so good. It's about a girl who is hard of hearing and a girl who is starting to realize she's gay, and how they become friends and how they open each other's lives. And it's not about how I help you. It's about how we help each other and how we break down walls. It's a really sweet manga. It's a really lovely, sweet manga. And I've had one person tell me they hate it so much. They can't stand it. They were like, it treats disability as like some kind of weird thing. I actually disagree wildly. I think this is one of the best disability representations I have ever seen ever on any kind, because it takes it from the perspective of the disabled person and also the perspective of the people around her. So it's not just one or the other. So like we just had a chapter about her younger sister who is hearing. And so we have Kanon, who has lost her hearing young. And then we have her younger sister, who is now, as many siblings to disabled people are, sort of feels sidelined. And how she is 100% supportive of her sister, but also has lost herself in the process. I think it's outstanding. I did make the New York Public Library's 2023 list of best book for teens. I think it's just amazing. What I love more than anything. This will become a theme for me if you read my blog. I love the inclusion of adults who offer role models. So in this case, Saki, who is the hearing friend, she is starting, both in high school, and she's starting to realize that maybe she's thinking about girls in a different way. And one day she's talking to somebody, and she meets somebody who's her hairstylist, actually. And this woman just pegs her immediately, perfect gaydar, and it nails her to the wall like a moth. And she had no idea that it was that obvious. And she's like, how did you know? And the woman's like, because I know. Like, it's obvious when you know what you're looking for. And I know that seems kind of mean, but it's not. And for me, someone like me walking through life, trying to be a role model and trying to say, like, I can see you, and it's okay, because being seen is good, and knowing who you are is good. It felt like a really interesting conversation, a little awkward, but really a lot of fun. Highly recommended. I think this is a a terrific manga. I do. And every time I just finished reading volume 7 in Japanese and cried. Then I reread it and cried again. Then I reread it and cried again. It was that good. So read the manga. It's great stuff. And that is my presentation. This is where to find me. You can find me on Twitter, but I'm trying really hard not to be on Twitter these days. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to go over to the chat, and I will start taking questions. So I hope you all enjoyed this presentation, and let me have your questions about this. And if anybody from CitrusCon can read some of the earlier stuff,
yes.
I'll be glad to grab it. Okay, let's have it.
Deadly Dapperling asks, is that a doodle of you on the last slide?
I'm sorry, what?
Deadly Dapperling asked if on the last slide that was a doodle of you.
That is a picture of me drawn by Marishima Akiko-sensei, who's a mangaka in Japan, who is a Yuri mangaka, who is a lesbian woman, and has also written about her struggle with ADHD, which I wish somebody would license because it's amazing and so hopeful and so aspirational. She and I met again because we met in 2005. We met 10 years later in 2015 for the Yuri 10. And it was Golden Week, so there was a lot of people in the train station. She kind of like had a hard time with it, and I navigated the Ikebukuro train station with her. And so she said she drew this picture of me being all heroic, saying, "It's this way. We're going this way. Everything's gonna be okay." So I use that as my little my avatar for my presentations. It's the one moment I looked really cool in life.
Oh, that's so cute.
It is, yeah.
Let's see here. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. If you have any questions, drop them in.
Yeah, absolutely. Drop them in the chat. Absolutely. And I want to say something real quick. It wasn't a question, but I do want to comment. A lot of times people are a little frightened to talk to their local library. I want to tell you a story about that real quick. I was in my 20s and I was just coming out. I still wasn't out to my family, and I went to my local library, and I noticed they didn't really have a lot of queer books. Like they had like 1 or 2, and I read everything I could read, and and some of it I didn't, and I wanted to go and ask them to please get more queer literature, but they didn't really know how to say it. So I went and said, you don't have a lot of lesbian or gay literature. And they said, well, we don't have a lot of lesbian or gay patrons. And I went away thinking, I don't really like that answer. So what I did, because I'm a researcher by heart, I went and looked up because it was the county library, I went and looked up the number of people, the population of our county, and then used 10% as an estimate. And I came back and I said, there are this number of people that you've decided not to serve because you decided there weren't enough people. And they were like, holy shit, you're right. And then they changed everything, and it changed things. And they said, well, what can we do? And I said, read this, here's this book, go to this list. This was before the internet. It took everything I had to do this. Libraries really are your friend. The American Library Association, which is, it's not always the most perfect organization, but it's very, very LGBTQ friendly. And if you encounter a librarian who does dismiss you, say, can I speak to your manager? Can I speak to the library? Because there's a case for that. And libraries want to serve people because they're having their identities. Libraries are under attack all over this country. And that's because controlling what people read is where fascism starts, and that's no joke. And I'm not overblowing that. Is literally number one thing on the fascist playbook. So fight back.
It's true.
Get your stuff. Get manga in your libraries.
And that's probably one of the reasons, like, one of the first books they start to ban is Fahrenheit 451.
Absolutely, right? It's so telling, isn't it?
It is.
It's so telling. Absolutely. So I do see a question here. I'm going to answer. Do Japanese bookstores include LGBT manga with the other BLGL, and do you think American bookstores should group them together? Okay, complicated questions for the win. It's so funny because it seems simple, right? All right, so BL NGL, Boys Love and Girls Love, are publisher slash bookstore categories. Okay. They are not fixed. They are a way for people to find things. So when you go into a Japanese bookstore, you don't go to the BL section. You go to the women's manga section. And they are organized there by publisher and then by author in Japanese. Okay. So you can tell. You walk into the woman's floor at Anime Nikabukuro, which is massive, and you can tell there's like all these pink or blue or purple books, and you go, okay, this is the BL section. How do we know it's the BL section? It doesn't say necessarily BL. It just is women's comics. But we can tell because that publisher is known for, like, we would go here like Sublime, right? We know what Sublime does. That's what they do. But if I go, I want to find Ichijinsha, is there a Yuri section? Is there a queer section? Sort of. So, and it changes because Japanese bookstores seasonally undergo a whole change. So sometimes you go there and there's like a Yuribu, like a Yuri section. It's got all this cool Yuri stuff. And sometimes you go there, nothing. And you're like, where all the Yuri stuff go? Well, it's by publisher. And you need to know the 3 or 4 publishers you're looking for. So it's a yes, no, and I don't know. Could that be recreated in American books? Okay, so then we have a different issue. American bookstores, of which there's only one chain left, Barnes & Noble, largely puts manga by title, right? Alphabetical by title.
Yeah, it's alphabetical by title. And like it's just
how do you
everything. It's everything
right,
from Pokemon to, the crazy.
Only the ring finger knows. I mean, yeah, it's like the heart, sometimes some of them, if they have somebody smart, they put like the BL down at the bottom, like a little chunk down at the bottom. And here's the thing. I spent years working for this. If you go into Kinokuniya, which has several locations all over America, they have in the English manga section a yaoi set of shelves and a yuri set of shelves. So having a Japanese bookstore acknowledge that yaoi and yuri are their own things has been a humongous change. JP bookstores sometimes do, and sometimes they're massive. Like a couple of years ago, every big publisher had a Yuribu, but now Shosen Publishing, Shosen Tower in Akihabara, has this massive Yuri section, and it is multi-format. Tora no Ana had the best. Tora no Ana had the best Yuri section. They had the shittiest signage. It was literally like printed out on an old printer, like said Yuri, Yuri, Yuri. And it was so cheesy looking, but it was like shelves and shelves and shelves of all like novels and light novels and art books and manga, and it was fantastic. But Tora no Ana and Akihabara is gone, and I will never, ever, ever get over that. Anime and I'm missing one. Anime show, so Comic Zin has a Yuri section. Melon Books does not. That's doujinshi mostly. Both of those are doujinshi. Anime sometimes has Yuribu. Also, sometimes just has a section. And the thing is about when you go to a section in a Japanese bookstore, just like an American bookstore, sometimes they're grouped by this is what I think, whoever did the shelving. So sometimes you find amazing stuff grouped together that you had never heard of before, and sometimes you go, why the hell is this here? This isn't Yuri. I don't know what it is.
No.
It's all subjective, it's all subjective.
Yeah. Do you think that the increasing queer manga has changed anything within Japanese culture and ideas, or is it still something limited to certain spaces?
It's a fantastic question. I can't express to you how about Japan. Every poll in Japan now in 2024, 2020 shows more than 70% of the Japanese population is totally pro same-sex marriage. Who is stopping same-sex marriage? The Supreme Court there has more than once said we need to have same-sex, we need marriage equality. This is not fair. You can't keep doing this. And the government, which is largely the ruling party, which is the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, and I'll explain Japanese politics in a second to you, they go, yes, we'll absolutely get on that. And then they don't. Are they anti-gay? No, they don't care. They just don't care. Here's the thing you don't understand about Japanese politics. It's crazy. It's really important, but it's crazy. They don't have a centrist or liberal party. They have a conservative party, the LDP, And then they have a very conservative party. And then they have an extremely conservative party. And then they have crazy right-wing, like militaristic nutballs. And those are the four parties they have. They only have conservative and right-winger. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. So they don't have, like, if you're sitting in Tokyo and you see one of these black fans go by with the speakers, they're like the crazy, let's, like Japan, it's like Nihon Ichiban, let's go commit another world war. I mean, like, they're nuts. They don't have a liberal party. There's no progressive party. So as a result, all the LDP has to do is say, sure, we'll get right on that, and then simply do nothing. And that's where we are. So Japan actually is probably more liberal than their politics would indicate, which is, of course, where we are as well, right? We are, as a country, largely more liberal than our politics indicate. And hopefully that we'll be able to show the world that shortly. But so Japan, the Japanese people are actually pretty okay with the idea of same-sex marriage. Whether or not any individual person is, same as here, same as anywhere. You're going to get people who go, oh, these kids, blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't listen to those people here. Why would you listen to them there? So yeah, it has. Going back real quick, about 15, 20 years, there was, when BL was sort of had peaked in Japan. It had peaked in the late 80s, early 90s. You would sometimes go into the stores and find like dozens of BL magazines, and it sort of peaked. And it got really big into drama CDs. There was a period of time where drama CDs, BL drama CDs, became really, really huge. And adult women, would get karaoke boxes. They would hire karaoke boxes and have like a BL drama CD listening party. And not every woman at that time was pro queer people. And when I started talking about Yuri back in the early 2000s here in America, there were people at the time who were like, ew, gay people. BL is good, but gay people are icky. And, that's changed. It changed. Part of it changed because they realized that what they were doing was harmful. Some people just grew up. And of course, the more, and this is true in Japan, it's true literally all over the world, the more queer people you see in media, the more people who feel comfortable coming out to you. If you are yourself a safe space and people start telling you stuff, it becomes harder to deny the humanity of the people around you when they are there. And so in America, probably the main turning point, and it's a really weird thing to say, but was probably Will and Grace. There were people in America who had never in their lives seen anything like a gay person, or that they knew of. I mean, they probably had an uncle or a cousin who was gay, but they didn't know that, or maybe even children, whatever. But on Will and Grace, they could see these people and they were just living lives, and it was a comedy, it was fun, they had romances, blah blah, and it was benign. And all of a sudden, some straight people were going, oh, I guess maybe it's not so bad. I was asked yesterday while I was sitting at my table, what do I say to people who say to me, well, it's just sexualizing people. It's just sexualizing children. And I say, and this is what I keep saying to people, if you read something like, not that you would, but if you read something like she loves to cook, she loves to eat, and you're going, that's just sexualizing people, that's you. Like, that's in your head. Because when I'm reading something that's about a queer life and it's about a queer experience, even if it is a young person, young people sexualize themselves without you. That is literally what adolescence is. So if you're looking at it and all you can see is people having sex, that's you. That's your head. Because I see queer experiences and I just see people living lives. So maybe you've got a fetish about young people having sex, and you need to think about what does that say about you, And if you're reading the kinds of things where it's like panty shots and I don't know, underage sex, then again, that might be you. And there's nothing, well, I don't want to say there's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing that I can do about it. But also you might want to think that, is that person really talking about the same thing as you're talking about? And if somebody's coming to a conversation with bad faith, just look at them and go, I'm not even having this conversation, bye. It's not, it's not worth it.
Okay. How do you think queer manga will continue to develop in the future? Are you seeing any trends on the horizon?
Well, first of all, queer manga, big as you know. So again, people born in the 90s going to work where there was never. Not only are there two Yuri magazines, there are two Yuri manga magazines. One is a monthly manga magazine, and one called Galette, which is running a Kickstarter right now for an English language translated version, which, woot, they have already made their Kickstarter funds. They're now working on their final stretch goal, and they have about a week left, so I highly recommend you go look at that. And if you want to go find it, just go to my Twitter or go to my blog. You'll find I talk about it constantly. So people growing up now will have never lived in a world when there was not queer manga. So instead of saying, I drew this manga because no one else was drawing it, or I'm telling the story because no one else was telling it, they will say, I want to tell my story too. And that is an incredibly powerful change. And we're going to see more representation. Crowdfunding is probably the biggest trend. There's a manga called Boyish Squared. It's a Butch x Butch Yuri anthology, and it is about two Butch women falling in love. And there's a lot of different artists and a lot of different stories, and they're really wonderful. The second volume of that is coming out, crowdfunded. Different manga artists like Yurina Miyuki and Anedo are just going and saying, fuck publishers. I'm just going straight to crowdfunding, and I'm getting my stuff out in English and in Japanese. It's changed. It changed the world because you can go straight to your audience and say, well, do you want this? And the audience goes, yes, give me. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. And it's important to remember, just as an aside, publishers publish what they think is going to make the most money. So if you want something and you don't see it and you're like, I know this really great manga and it's not coming out. Why is it not coming out? Don't be like, oh, publishers don't want to, blah, they hate us. They don't hate you. They don't know what you know. Publishers want to make money. So if you write them and say, hi, publisher, I know of this really good thing that you might not know of. I would like you to consider licensing it. If you could get 1,000 of your friends to do the same thing, and that publisher is the correct publisher, then maybe you get it. So, and I say this because this is another thing that most fans don't understand. Publishers have connections with certain companies. You cannot ask, for instance, Seven Seas to license something from Kadokawa. They do not have a relationship with Kadokawa. Yen has a relationship with Kadokawa. Is it important? Yes. If you say, oh man, this manga is awesome. Dear Seven Seas, I want you to license this really cool manga. And they go, it's Kadokawa. We can't license stuff that's not from them. So, but you do a little work and you say, who's publishing this? Which one of the publishers in America licenses this? Well, it's not that hard to find. You have to do a little work sometimes. You can ask me sometimes. There's a few other people who also know the industry you can ask. But you can also just say, I don't know if this is you, but can you potentially do this? And send it to like your 3 favorite publishing companies. Like if you love a BL, for instance, or a really cool queer manga, you can write Sublime. Is Sublime gonna license an openly queer manga? I don't know, because that's not what Sublime does. Will somebody else? Maybe. Yen might. So you just need to know who you're talking about. And we haven't even touched on the newest trend. Hang on one second. Housekeeping is here. Can you come back in a few moments? Sorry about that. I have to leave the hotel room in 10 minutes. We haven't even touched on the newest trend, which is Chinese manga, danmei and baihe. And all I can tell you is danmei is getting bigger, and baihe is on the way. There is a book coming out next year, I think it's coming out, I'm sorry, I think in November. It's called Taiwan Travelogues. It is a Baihe novel by the most famous Taiwanese Baihe novelist. Her name is Yang Shengzi, and I am so excited. I can't wait for us to get some Baihe. I'm, we're starting to get stuff from Taiwan. We're starting to get stuff from Korea. We're starting to see Vietnamese. We're seeing Thai BL and Thai GL change the way Thailand approached same-sex marriage, and then they passed it because it changed the way people thought about it. So yeah, are the trends? Oh yes. Are things going to queer? Yes. It's wonderful. It's positive. It's fantastic. And so keep your eye out for all those things. And of course, I cover some of it on Okazu, but there are so many other people who are covering it. So there's so much for you to watch. By Hood's Chinese Girls Love. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't explain that. Danmei is their BL, and Baihe, which is the same characters as Yuri, Lily. It's the lily flower. So Baihe is lily in Chinese. So we have a lot to look forward to. And I'm hoping hoping to see some historical Chinese drama Baihe soon. We've got all this Danmei with these pretty boys and their long hair and their flowing skirts and swords that don't actually. I used to teach martial arts, and every time there's a sword fight and it's terrible, it makes me cry. But yeah, I want some Baihe about some kick-ass women. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, it's funny you brought up like the Thai, because we actually had a panel by Dr. Bodadette about how,
Tom is awesome, right? He's great.
yes, about how that's changed the landscape and helped get gay marriage legalized there.
Yeah, it absolutely did. Because not only did the stories actually within the context of the stories say things like there was a story, the big Yuri story, the big GL story was called Pink Theory Gap. Gap the series is what they call it. You could watch it for free with English subtitles on YouTube, so go do that. And Becky and Friedman were amazing together. But there's a scene where we confront the powerful matriarch of the family, and she's like, if you don't have children, who's going to take care of you? And if you don't do this, society will reject you like your older sister. And the character's like, I don't care. I don't care. If you want to reject me for who I am, well, screw you, old lady. And she doesn't say it that way because she's much politer. And it makes an impact on the screen. It's a very impactful scene where it's like, I need to do this. I am in love with this woman and I can't not be this person. And this changed the conversation in Thailand. And again, Thailand, the people were very pro same-sex marriage, but this shifted the bar with all these straight actors coming out and going, why don't we have same-sex marriage? Why don't we have marriage equality here? Like, Thailand has had literally a sex worker culture of trans and cross-dressing non-binary people for centuries, and it was relatively accepted. Everybody knew about it. Why don't we have marriage equality? We have all these gay people, we have all these queer people. Why? And it literally within a very short time shifted the bar, and boom, now they are the second country in Asia with marriage equality. So yeah, I mean, that stuff is amazing.
It really is.
Yeah. I think I have time for one more question. And then,
anybody got any more questions?
This is your big chance. Of course, if you ever want to reach me, you can find me on Bluesky. You can find me on Twitter for at least a little while longer, although I'm trying very hard not to have conversations there and just use it for promotion because
it can go downhill fast.
So that's, yeah, I hope so. I hope it like crashes and burns really hard. Bluesky, I have a Facebook group, and Gap the series playlist. Thank you, person who next week. There's also more Thai GL. I actually have a writer for my blog, Frank, who is basically covering GL from non-Japanese sources, all the live action. So he's reviewed some Korean stuff. He's reviewed some Vietnamese. There's a Vietnamese GL series that just came out. So Asia at large is really understanding. It's got that soft power, and BL is huge, and it's selling a lot, and it's changed the world. And let's face it, BTS is in some part as popular as they are because they played with the ships within themselves. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that that's not true. But some of the groups in Korea play it harder, and it changed things. It changed the landscape. And every time we see real queer rep, I think it changes the landscape even more. So, it's quite extraordinary. And there's it really comes down to money. It's going to always come down to money. So if you see a boom, somebody's talking about the boom in the chat. If you see a boom for queer rep, it's because the publisher's making money. And that's the big difference. And so if you see Kickstarters and you go, I want more of this, that money goes straight to the creators. You should definitely give them the money. And then the publishers are watching. They are watching. They're watching all the time. And in Japan, of course, you have the comic markets where they actually see who's getting the lines. So if like Natsuo Mutsume Sensei, who does butch work, of Ana Edo does sort of horror, Yuri horror. If they're getting the lines, if they're getting the sales, if their Kickstarters are being successful, Galette magazine asks for, I don't know, it was like $1 million to start, and it's almost at 5 million yen. If they get that kind of success, then the publishers go, there's a hungry audience, and that's why.
Money talks louder than anything else.
Money talks louder. I'm going to do this real quick as the last question. Why is there more BL and GL? There are more straight women than gay women, and that's not a joke, right? It's the real truth. BL is 15 years older. There are more straight women who are, and I do not mean, I've said this about 20 times this weekend, this is not meant to be an insult. BL fans are less discriminate. They will buy BL because it's BL. And I do not mean that in any way to be insulting. It's pretty boy. Oh, I like this. This is really good. They buy it. Because women are acculturated to buy. The Yuri audience is more discriminate. And it's not an insult. We tend to identify with this couple. We want to see the sporty couple. We want to see the Takarazuka couple. We would like to see a horror story. We want to see an action story. And so we tend not to, like, I don't want to do schoolgirls anymore. So everything comes up with schoolgirls. I'm just not interested in. But if it's adult women, like Black and White is a manga that's out from Seven Seas. I love it. It's super violent. It's about an office hate romance. Really toxic, horrible story. Absolutely love it from the bottom of my heart. But can I recommend that to anybody who doesn't like that kind of violence? And I'm not joking. It's super violent. So if you have trauma about violence, you are not going to want to read that. So are you discriminate? Are you going to say, well, I'd really rather read something like by the same artist? Ayaka-chan is in love with Hiroko Senpai, which is a live action right now. You go, oh, that's much sweeter. Yeah. I'll watch that one. I'll write that one. I'll read that one. I'll buy that one. And so there's a difference. And the Yuri audience is also more split men and women, and men don't tend to be as acculturated to buying stuff as women are. There are women in this world where the only hobby is really shopping. So women are acculturated to go out and buy stuff, and men frequently are not. And there's a whole, and this is a whole other panel, a whole online culture of, like, if I can get it for free, it's fine, even if it's illegal. And I can't express to you how hurtful that is to the industry, but there you go. So, and things come in waves. I joke about this all the time, that Yuri goes in waves and BL goes like peaks and then drops. It's a stupid sex joke, but it's actually pretty true. There's always a series every couple of years in Yuri that really brings in a whole new wave of fandom. So we had, like, last year we had Birdie Wing, and we had G-Witch, Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury. And they both brought in huge new waves of people who were like, we're trying to explain that Birdie Wing is a Gundam AU, and G-Witch is actually a Utena AU. Like, it's so hard. Like, there's so much history now, and you don't even all know it anymore. Like, you come in under people. I know, wasn't Birdie Wing amazing? It's so good. And you know what? That's a great comment. So Dransikin says, it's almost like I treat BL like junk food, but I treat Yuri like buying quality food. And can I just say, I'm going to steal that line so much. In some ways, for people who are looking for particular representation, that might be true. So there we go. That's great. And we're at the top of the hour, so I have to get going because
check out your hotel room.
But thank you all so much. I had a great time being here once again. You're all so wonderful. And I just want to do one last thing real quick. I wrote a book about the history of the Yuri genre. It's called um, By Your Side, the first 100 years of Yuri anime and manga. And I hope you will all go to YuriCon and buy that or go to the wherever fine books are sold. If you go to YuriCon, on the homepage, there's a picture of it, and you can click that link. It has like everywhere you can buy it online. My publishers, thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you very,
a
very much.
great day and safe trip home. Hope everyone else
Thank,
has a great day too. Bye.
yes, thank you very much, and good luck. Have a great CitrusCon.